So today I have a little bit of a divergence from my usual pocket watch collecting. I am usually one to collect American pocket watches. I just like the history of some of the brands. But I picked up this really cool Zenith pocket watch. And this is going to let you in on one of my pet peeves of pocket watch collecting. And a lot of it has to do with the cases. I've made videos about case materials. I've made videos saying that I'm not the biggest fan of gold-filled and plated and coated cases. But my big pet peeve is, this is an absolutely gorgeous movement, and I can't see it. So in this video, we're going to take this beautiful watch, take a look at it, and we're going to put it into a much nicer case. Welcome to another episode of Pocket Watch Time. My name is Patrick W. And today we're looking at a Zenith pocket watch. And for those of you who are familiar with the channel, you definitely know that Zenith, and really just about any European or Swiss brand, that's just not my thing. But this watch, it's different. And by looking at the dial, maybe you can see some of those differences. This is an American style Zenith. It's actually a Canadian railroad model. Those 24-hour markers that are on this particular dial, that's pretty specific for the Canadian Railroad. So even though this watch is a little bit different than the typical watch that I review, there's one thing that is absolutely the same. This watch comes in a gold-filled case. And I get a little bit of heat for my somewhat dislike of gold-filled watches. And it's not that they can't be a nice case. And to be fair, this was a railroad watch. There shouldn't be a solid gold watch sitting on the railroad. But man, could it have been silver? Could it have been just a base metal? Could it have just been a non-coated case? So to take this pretty stellar movement, which I'll talk about a little bit later, I want to be able to see it. And that is the perfect excuse for me to get rid of this gold-filled case, and I'm actually going to put it into a salesman case or a display case.
Well, if you've made it this far in the video, let me first thank you, and second, ask for a little bit of support. The easiest support you can give is just a like to the video, leave a comment, subscribe if you like the content, and if you want to support the channel in an even greater way, I've got links in the description for my YouTube memberships, for Patreon, and a whole bunch of other things that just help out the channel. Thank you so much.
But I ran into another problem. I don't usually collect 18 size pocket watches. This is a pretty big watch. So now that you know that I have a movement that I'm not too familiar with, or at least I don't generally collect Swiss watches, a gold-filled case that I'm not particularly fond of, an absolutely gorgeous movement that I want to see, you kind of can get to the point of what this whole episode's going to be about. I want to get this beautiful watch out of this not so beautiful case, and I want to put it into a case that I can see everything. I get a better view of this dial, which by the way, it's flawless. There might be a minute hairline there, but my old man eyes, I can't see it. I absolutely love the Zenith text. I don't really collect railroad watches either, but there was something about this dial that just caught my attention. And then of course the movement really caught my attention. So step one in this little adventure is obviously to take it out of the case. I've already removed the case lid front and back. This, like the majority of railroad watches, is lever set. So you'll see here that I pulled out the lever. That's actually what allows you to set the minute hand and the hour hand. What I'm doing now, I'm actually lining them up to the 12 o'clock position. For no other reason than I'm going to be putting my fingers on the dial, and I don't want to accidentally bump into any of these hands. So with that accomplished, it's down to the relatively easy part of this. You just gotta find a screwdriver, and you gotta find the right size, and you've gotta take a couple screws out of the back. Generally speaking, most of these watches, they're held in by 2 screws. Plain as day, you can see them from a mile away. There's really nothing too tricky about this type. And that's one of the things that really drew me to wanting to get this particular Zenith. For whatever reason, Zenith decided to use American sizing for this case. Well, movement. So American watches come in 12 size, 16 size, the big ones are 18 size, and that's a standard American sized movement. Swiss watches generally have their own sizing. So a Swiss case doesn't fit an American watch. However, for a couple different brands and some really interesting movements, the Swiss, I guess trying to capitalize on American and or Canadian railroad watches, they made watches compatible with the American standard cases. And that is truly probably the most exciting thing about this watch for me. I could take this movement out of this case and I could transfer it into an exhibition case. Just like my wristwatches, I love an exhibition case back. So now that the screws are out, it's time to raise the crown. You'll hear a big pop. And that should be the last real big piece that's holding this movement in. And so now by flipping it over, putting a little pressure on it, the movement falls right out. And there it is. I've got a beautiful, relatively huge movement. I mean, this thing is thick. This thing is big. I am not too familiar with 18 size pocket watches. I think I've only got one, maybe two others in my collection. So now we have to prepare the exhibition case to accept this movement. And this is a vintage case, so it's kind of a weird thing. I was looking around for an 18 size exhibition case. I'm familiar with a company that makes 12 sizes and 16 sizes, and they actually make a modern version. I've got a couple pocket watches in these modern versions, and I absolutely love them. Because similar to a lot of things you'll hear me talk about, you get old-time charm, but you get modern craftsmanship and quality. So finding an 18 size, it actually turned out to be pretty difficult. I couldn't find a new manufacturer case, but I was able to find a gentleman on eBay, of all places, and he's pretty well known in the world of pocket watches. He's a member of the NAWCC, and he restores or maybe just refurbishes these cases. So he takes them apart, he oils them, he actually puts in new crowns and new stems. So this is a old case that has been modernized. And I'm a little worried just because I just don't know how it's going to work. But so far, so good. I was able to slide it in here, a little bit of a tight fit. So you've got to jiggle it a little bit, and you've got to make sure that the crown is in the right position to accept the movement. And really, it slides in just fine. So once again, so far so good. And that's a tough thing to say, because for anyone out there who's done any little tinkering with watch movements or anything like that, you will find out very soon that something is going to go wrong. And gosh, it's horrible to say that, but it just always seems to be the way. And so far, the only really bad thing that I ran into was when disassembling, one of those screws was in really tight, and it just took a little extra force to get it out. Nothing dangerous, nothing bad, and I don't want to strip any threads, but that was a pretty mild problem. So here on the reverse side, we're now putting coarse screws in, and they're tiny. They dance all over the place, and there one danced. So you've got to pick it up just right and make sure you get it in the hole, and there we go. We get a little better placement for this one, and just tighten it down. I'm initially going to tighten these down a little bit loose, just because I want to secure the watch. Once it's kind of in there and I'm sort of holding on to it a little bit better, I'm going to come back and I'm going to tighten them down fully. So we've got it all screwed in, and it looks great. Flipping over to the other side, I've still got the hands at the 12 o'clock position. Now the big test is, will this work? So you've got to make sure that the crown actually is lined up in there and it's touching all the right components. So I've once again pulled out the lever, and I'm just turning the crown, trying to make sure that it's engaging into the hands. And yeah, I'm getting a good rotation. The hour hand and the minute hand are going around the dial quite well. The gentleman who refurbed this case has many different names for his crowns. I think he had one that he called a 2.0, and this was a 3.0. So I don't know what's the difference between the different generations of crown and stem that he's made, but So far, my hat's off to you, sir. You made a very nice crown. So in typical watch fashion, I have put the hands at 10 and 2. And like I stated before, I'm going to come back and I'm just going to put a little bit of tight tension on these screws just to hold it in a little bit better. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a twist, so getting a little bit more tightness there. Come up to the top screw and see how it's doing. And yep, it's got a little bit of tension to give. So now we're all set. We're really ready to rock and roll here. I'm just kind of testing the movement, make sure there's no wobble in there. I want everything to be secure. And hitting the plates and hitting the dial, delicately of course, everything seems to be pretty tight. So of course, gonna give it one little extra test just to prove it. And yep, I'm not really getting anything there, so perfect. And do one more twist here at the bottom, see if it makes any moves. And nope, it's pretty good. You know, if I really wanted to force it, I'm sure I could, but you don't want to put it in that tight. You'll actually have problems with the stem. If you put it in there too tight, it'll sort of change the geometry internally. So of course, now, here's a really good test. We want to make sure that we can wind this watch. So let's give this watch a proper wind. And after a few winds, I'll give it a little bit of a jiggle, and whoop, there she goes. So, this is actually a very loud movement. So, some watches, they kind of have a bit more of a subtle tick. Some watches have a really big tick, and this one is quite a ticker. So, beautiful balance though. It's got a lot of adjustment screws on there, and it's a really large balance, and it's a 18 size watch, so I guess it's a large watch. So all in all, that is a really fun package. So now we've got the back lid on, and of course it's time to attach the front lid. The front lid is a little bit larger in terms of the metal, so it's got a smaller window, or a smaller, actual crystal than the back. Thankfully, the crystal in the bezel is pretty well aligned so that you can see the full dial. But if I had to be fair, the star of the show is the case back. So now we've got the blue gloves off, we've got a complete watch in hand, so now we can just kind of show it off. Here's where I get to tell you kind of the interesting parts of this watch for me. As I explained a little bit earlier, it's a Swiss movement, it's a Zenith movement, which is not something I typically collect. But this railroad version for the Canadian market, it's just really cool. And it's big, 18 size, it's high jeweled, it's got a fish scale damaskeening to the actual movement plates. It's just a really beautiful watch. I don't know, something about that dial and that font really caught my attention. And then when I saw the back and I saw that fish scale damaskeening, I don't have a single watch with an actual pattern like that. And so to get this relatively uncommon Zenith movement with really beautiful patterned plates, a high-grade railroad movement, I couldn't resist. This watch wasn't super expensive. I've actually bought another Swiss railroad watch. That one hurt. This one was pretty moderately priced. So all in all, I'm very pleased with it.